May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O God, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. So we've been traveling our Lenten journey for over a month now. I know some of you have been following Lent madness avidly, voting every day to see who will win the golden halo at the end. Some of you have been watching the monks online from the Society of St. John the Evangelist, and I suspect some of you have given up something or taken something on to help observe this holy and special season of Lent. And maybe some theme has sort of come out for you, or something that you really noticed about yourself that you wanted to work on during this season. There's a theme that for me has popped out over these last weeks as we've been reading John's Gospel. When I first noticed the second Sunday of Lent we were reading from John, I thought, well, that's a little bit odd because we're in the year of Matthew, and we don't usually pick up John until we hit the Easter season. But if you've been here or been paying attention, we've read from John for the last 4 Sundays. And our poor crucifers have had to stand there holding the cross through these very long readings from the Gospel of John over these weeks. But I see a real theme that has emerged through them, and one that I think is really helpful and useful for us to think about and perhaps act on. And that's been this theme of light and darkness. And it's run through, sometimes more subtly, sometimes a little bit more obvious. The second Sunday of Lent, we read the story of Nicodemus the Pharisee, who came to Jesus under cover of darkness. He had questions. He was uncertain. But he really believed that Jesus was something special, that perhaps Jesus was the Messiah. But he was too afraid to come in the light. He was too afraid to show himself in the light of day. He was still holding on to the status and authority and power he had as a Pharisee. But you also know, if we keep reading John, Nicodemus eventually does come out into the light. And Nicodemus defends Jesus. Nicodemus sees the light of Christ burning within him, and he has to act on that. Nicodemus goes from darkness into light. The next Sunday, we read the woman at the well, which is a wonderful, wonderful story. In fact, if you were here, you might remember the woman sort of came to visit us to tell us a little bit about her story. She whose life had been in upheaval, she who was outcast, she who was actually forced into the light of day in the heat because she didn't want to have to deal with those looking down upon her. But it's there out in that bright light that she meets Jesus. It's there out in that bright light where he tells her everything she's ever done, recognizes who she is as a child of God. And the effect Jesus has on her is so profound that she gets up her courage and she runs back to town and says to everybody, you have to come see. You have to come out into the light and see this man. See this light who is shining in the midst of us. And she was changed. And she was never again forced to go to the well in the middle of the heat of the day. And God's light continued, I believe, to shine in her for the rest of her life. Last Sunday we heard the man born blind. And that question was put up before us. Who's really blind? And who really sees? Perhaps those who could not see were the ones who could really see the light of God. And those who might be able to see in the world were still sitting in darkness, unable to see the light of God, unable to see the light of Christ in their midst, sowing fear, not wanting to allow that light to shine. And this morning, again, very long passage from John, but I think all of these stories were sort of pointing in this direction, which is so pointing us towards Holy Week and Easter. The story of Lazarus rising from the dead, everyone believing that his life was over, that there was no hope, that Lazarus had passed away and was never to come again. And yet Jesus does come and raises Lazarus from the dead. The light of God shining so brightly in that place. And it's a complete foreshadowing, of course, of what we are going to do in the next couple of weeks during Holy Week, the stories we will tell. But we know Lazarus is going to die again. Jesus will rise again. The light of Christ will come into the world for good, and the darkness will not be able to overcome it. And I think this theme of light and darkness for us is so valuable in our own spiritual life, in our own life out in the world, because we are all confronted with the darkness all the time. We are all confronted with decisions that will either keep us sitting in darkness or put us out into the light. There have been some things in the news lately that have made me think about this. Some of you may have seen that whole controversy with honey-made graham crackers and the commercial that they made featuring a gay family and a family of mixed race. Interestingly enough, the two men and child who are in that commercial go to All Saints in Pasadena. They are our neighbors and our fellow Episcopalians, and Honey-Maid has been bombarded with negative email and tweets about how dare they. This is disgusting. This is an abomination. And yet Honey-Maid's response was absolutely beautiful. If you've not been reading about it, go home and Google. Honey-Maid hired some artists who took all of those emails and printed every single one out, and they rolled them all up, they glued them together so that now it all reads love. And then they took all the positive emails that they had gotten, they rolled those up and circled that word love with all of them, and they had 10 times the number of positive emails and tweets as negative emails and tweets. So if you think you're too old to eat graham crackers, you're not. Go home and eat graham crackers. But even a little more disturbing this week was the news out of Canterbury, where our own Archbishop gave a radio address where he said he believes that the persecution and murder of Christians in Africa has a direct link to the support that the Western churches are giving to gay and lesbian people and allowing the ordination and consecration of gay and lesbian people. And I can't help but thinking that our new Archbishop has chosen to sit in the dark on this one. Our spiritual leader has found himself caught in a place of fear and has been unable to stand up and be a prophetic voice, afraid that those African churches may break away or something else may happen. But the truth of the matter is, I can't make the connection between the loving and caring and support that Western churches give to gay and lesbian people and the decision for somebody to murder somebody in Africa. Choosing the darkness instead of the light. We all have these choices all the time. And sometimes the choice to do nothing is as telling as any other. The choice to sit back and not speak out. The choice to let something happen and not stand up. We are coming into the holiest of seasons of the church year, the time when we celebrate that absolutely brilliant glow of the light of Christ in our lives. Because in 2 Sundays we're going to be sitting here full of lilies and white banners and big music and bells and everything else, celebrating the light of Christ. But the light of Christ only continues to shine if we shine it, if we make the decision to shine it. Because each of us every day can make the decision to sit in darkness. Each of us can just let something pass us by. And I'm not just talking to the adults in church either, because I know you young people make these kind of decisions in school all the time. Decisions whether to say something or say nothing. Decisions whether to stop bullying or allow it to happen. So all of us, each one of us sitting here, has the ability to shine that light of Christ if we choose. To bring the light of the resurrection that is to come everywhere we are. Or we can choose to sit and be silent and be safe. So where are you leaning these days? We're coming to the closing days of Lent. Some of those disciplines you may decide to let go or stop doing this or stop doing that. But I hope that this might be something that you would continue, something that would become a regular part of your spiritual practice. Taking into yourself that you are the one that's shining the light of Christ. You are the one that is making a difference. You are the one choosing not to sit in darkness. Amen.